As you can see now, I have laid the fabric flat over the kayak frame. And this is the rear end. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna make a little pocket. I put some thread on the needle and I make a simple half stitch knot, and I start at one end and I make stitches like I'm gonna show you in a short while. This is real simple stitches and they don't need to be pretty or fancy because you are going to take them out in a short while. Make sure you have at least 5 centimeters or 2 inches extra fabric sticking out. So this is one way, and now I'm going back. I can take it closer to the camera here so you can see what I'm doing. So this is one way, and now going back opposite. When I return to my starting point, I just tie these two ends together. Oops. Using a couple of half stitches again. And leave a little end here and I cut it. And this is the final result. Now we are at the front of the kayak. I fastened the other end of the fabric to the rear end, and now we are going to make a little pocket here also. So I just kind of stretch it, and as you can see, here's the tip of the kayak, and now I need to go even further in because we're going to stretch this fabric. This is 30 centimeters, that's about 12 inches, and this is as far as we're going to stretch the fabric. So the next pocket will be here, and I just do the same thing that I did in the other end. I tie a knot. And I make real simple rough stitches. The only function of this pocket is to keep the fabric in place while we do the rest of the stretching. And again, we tie together two loose ends. A couple of half stitches. Now it should be ready to be stretched, but first we need to make it wet. When it gets wet, it stretches more easily, and we can do all the stretching while it's soaking wet. I'm going to use this spray bottle. And as I start stretching and as I start stitching, I'm gonna keep it wet all the time. So every hour I work on the kayak, I go over it and spray it. And only when it's absolutely finished, I leave it to dry. This is the rear end of the kayak. I just removed the fabric so that you can see how I do this. This is a normal strap for strapping your kayak on the roof of your car. And I happen to have this very handy beam here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that the kayak can't move forward when I stretch the fabric forward. So, and this is a real solid part of the kayak, so here's a good spot for tying it. There's a lot of stress on the kayak frame when you do this first stretching, but now I can pull it really hard forward and it stays here. So, put the pocket back on and try to get ready to stretch the front. Now I'm in the front of the kayak and we're ready to stretch. I have fastened this racket strap to the building, and I have pulled it around a clamp. So, and the fabric is all soaking wet. So now we're gonna fasten the clamp and start pulling. I thought it could be a good idea to just take a little piece of wood and fold the fabric around it. That way, if the clamp starts to slide, it can't slide too far. Like this. And I really need to pull this clamp hard, as hard as I can, because we're going to use a lot of force. We're good to go. I start pulling the strap. And I should better be out of the way in case this will loosen. Getting there. And there we go. And now I just need to let go, which may be easier said than done. Let's take a little bit at a time. To just open it. Good. Voila. Now with the fabric stretched lengthwise, I'm just going to try to center it on the kayak. I use the staple gun, thin staples, and now I can try to find the fold that I made earlier. I'm just going to put a staple in there. If it has come slightly off, you can just adjust it by just pulling fabric over. I have a couple of extra staples on the sharp bend here. Otherwise you don't need more than every 5-6 inches or so. 15 centimeters. That's a good distance between every staple. Remember, you need to get them out also, so don't overdo this. For this particular zigzag stitching, I have taken a length of thread, which is 1, 2, 3 of my arm spans, more or less. And that is for the back part of the kayak. For the front, I've taken 4 arm spans because it's a little longer forward and besides slightly wider. So I begin here at the end, and it's kind of hard to see, but you just have to try. So we start pretty close to the gunnel here. So I try to kind of pull the fabric, see how far it goes, and then I will need a little extra space from there. So my stitching is always the same. It's 1 centimeter. That's about 1/3 of an inch or something. And the first one I make, I'm gonna just tie a knot. If you want to remove it later, you could make a slip knot, and it would be easy to just pull it out, but I'm gonna let this sit. It's kind of nice to look at, I think, so I don't mind. So it just stays there. And then just opposite and same distance from the gunnel, I do the same. I take 1 stitch, which is about 1 centimeter long, and I pull the thread through, and I pull it forward. And I don't go that far forward, 10 centimeters maybe, or 4 or 5 inches. And again, I try to stretch the fabric slightly and make a stitch like that. And opposite, try to kind of copy the same distance from the gunnel and in toward the middle. And now you can see I have this zig and a cross stitch, and I can pull them together, but don't waste your energy by pulling too hard now. You can pull it all when it's all set later. Just make it firm and you can go forward. And now you can use this measurement again. This is 15 centimeter, or it's something like that. And I go forward, and I would guess I have a couple of inches, 5 centimeters from the gunnel here. I go forward, and I go across, and I always move the needle the same direction, forward, that way, in my pulling direction. So, and I go forward. And here we go. I think we have the whole thing fixed and set up now, so I can start pulling, and I do this several times. So every cross stitch here is being pulled and held, and this can be pretty tough on your hand, so you may need a pair of gloves. But again, remember, you can do this several times. And of course, remember to keep the fabric wet. As you go. When you come to the end here, you can just make a slip knot. This. You go back to where you started. And you go over it once again. Just loosen my knot. And make a new one. Now this looks pretty nice and tight, and I'm keeping it wet, so when it gets dry it will shrink even more and become even tighter. It can be hard to have it really tight here in the end, so I bring my staple gun and I just pull up the fabric and put in a few staples. And don't overdo this because you need to take them out again also. So just a few where you can't really get the zigzag string to work. That's it.